and I've actually had the pleasure of being able to work with both of my attendees today, Erin and Tammy. Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I want to welcome you to BigTime's Invoicing webinar. So, again, my name is Brian with the Customer Success Department. I do work alongside the support department. So before we jump into the invoicing, I do like to go ahead and remind everybody that you do have unlimited support tickets with your BigTime annual subscription. So any questions that do come up during the webinar, I do try to address immediately as it's happening. Any questions that I'm not able to answer immediately, I will take offline and will reach out to you individually. And then, of course, if you have anything that comes up after the fact, then you can definitely go ahead and shoot an email over to support@bigtime.net. We have a great team of people over there who are set up and ready to be able to assist. All right. We also do have a little questions portion down in your Citrix launcher, so definitely feel free to go ahead and push any questions that you may have as we're going through the presentation into the questions little area of your GoToWebinar control panel, and I will be able to go ahead and address them as they come through. All right. So first and foremost, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just give a little overview of what today is going to be. Today we're going to be going over the following calculators, which are going to be manual, time and materials, and fixed fee invoicing. So there is some setup that is required in order to be able to utilize the invoicing function in BigTime. So we're going to go ahead and go through that just rather quickly before we jump into actually creating invoices, and then of course talking about billing rates as well. So what we're going to go ahead and do is jump into invoicing, and from our drop down we're going to go ahead and choose configure. Now from the configuration page, this will show up blank for you when you originally start with BigTime. So you will want to go ahead and fill in your company name and address. This is going to create your company block or address block for your invoicing purposes. Now, you can also upload your logo. You can see I've actually already gone ahead and done so. And down in the bottom, we have the address block preview. So my logo is currently showing to the left of my address block, but I do like to go ahead and encourage everybody to take a look at the different views that we have because you might find something that you really like, and this will play into your PDF style. Okay, so I actually like mine at the top, so I'm going to go ahead and save that here. It just makes my logo a little bit larger in reference to the address block that I have. Okay. Second little tab is going to be default. If you're charging sales tax for any of the items that you are billing your clients for, you will want to go ahead and turn your tax type on. Now, I do like to go ahead and let folks know that this is only available if you are using QuickBooks at this time. Otherwise, it does require us inputting your tax rates, which would actually, it would cost the service points. So there is a charge for doing it, but it can be done if you're not currently integrated with a QuickBooks file. All right, invoice auto numbering settings is the next portion I like to cover. Now, we can actually set up your invoicing to automatically number for you and keep track of the numbers within BigTime. This is the place where we would set it up under our default screen. And you can see that I have mine set up to be a 6-digit numerical auto increment number. You can tell because I'm using P as my identifier down in my format, and it's 6 characters long. Now, my next ID number, the next invoice that I'll create within my environment will be 5001. Now, whenever you're changing billing software, I always do recommend making sure that you give yourself a hard delimiter. So if my last invoice was 5001 or 5000 in my old software, maybe let's go ahead and bounce this to 6000. So I'll know 6000 and up was performed in BigTime, and anything under that was in my old system. All right, calculators is going to be next. So Oh, you know what? I just realized I made the critical error. I didn't save before I moved forward. So save. All right. Calculators is going to be our next tab. Now, by default, fixed fee option is turned off. So if you are going to be using value-based pricing or percentage complete invoicing, you will want to make sure that this function is turned on. PDF styles is next. Now, PDF styles are very similar to print styles within QuickBooks. We create an invoice within the BigTime environment, which is for our view only. It's not necessarily going to dictate what it is that we're actually presenting to our client. What dictates what our clients will see is going to be this PDF style. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and create one really quickly. We'll go ahead and click on the Create New option. Okay. Section number 1 is going to ask me to give my report or print style a name. So we'll call this June Invoice Template. You can also go ahead and actually give your report or information a title or description. Now, this is actually very good if you are going to be sharing or have multiple people producing invoices, so that way they will know what this invoice title actually is for. So we can say maybe this is going to be for time and materials. Okay, so the reason I like to go ahead and just put some notes is it does give you a really nice helpful reminder. You can see from my previous screen I did have a lot of different PDF styles, so I want to be able to differentiate which one is which. When I was a customer of BigTime before I was an employee here, I did actually have about 12 different print styles because your clients are going to require seeing different things on their invoices. Some clients want to see overall totals plus timestamps with notes. Some folks want to be able to see overall totals with timestamps and no notes. Some folks want to see receipts, others don't. Some folks want to see budget status, others don't. So you'll create a print style for each opportunity that you have to be able to present to your clients. All right? So we'll just put a nice description here. Okay. Under section number 2, this is where we're really going to get into the meat and potatoes of what shows up in the header and footer of our invoices. Now, the header and footer is where we're going to house our client address block, our address block. We're going to go ahead and identify whether or not we want to share the overall note. Now, I do definitely want my logo to appear on my invoice, and I've decided that I like it when my logo is on top of my address block from that previous screen. I do want to share both my client bill to address and contact name, just in case I have a project manager whose name needs to appear on my invoice. And then the overall note by default is turned on. I will actually show you where this overall note is located and what drives this. But when you're inside your projects, when you have the default invoice note, that transfers to the overall note. The fields are going to determine what fields we will be showing in the upper right-hand side of the header of our invoice. So total amount due, invoice number, and due date are automatically by default selected. I actually like to go ahead and put invoice date, due date, invoice number. Total amount due is actually calculated for me at the bottom of my screen. If you want to be able to say this is for the work performed between June 1st and June 30th, you'll turn on the date range function. I also like to show my invoice terms, purchase order number if when's applicable, and I also like to show my project name. The only reason that I select this is because I do actually have multiple projects under one client. Now, the project or ID code is also going to be driven out of your QuickBooks project list. So if you are using a customized ID code within your projects, it's going to be the project ID code that appears here. And then just to kind of follow up, the overall note is going to be what appears here in the default invoice notes inside your projects. All right. So I feel pretty good with what I've selected in section 2 fields. So I'm going to bounce over to appearance next. Now, some folks are still sending invoices via snail mail. that's okay. We like to accommodate those folks too. So if you are one of those firms, then if you're using windowed envelopes, you can definitely go ahead and adjust the spacing in your header to be able to match your address block and your client's address block to your windowed envelopes. So just by selecting the radio button, we'll do so here. Okay. Font and paragraph is the next portion over. So I personally am not an Arial girl myself. I like Calibri, but you can see we only do have 6 options for font. So you'll just be limited to what is available here. All right. Font size defaults at 9. Now we do recommend keeping your font size at 9 only because if we make your font any larger, it does give potential to make your columns a little squishy. So it will cause dates to run over and things of that nature. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you keep it on or about 9. Color scheme will make it so the word invoice in the upper right-hand portion of our invoice, as well as the dollar amount due, can actually match our logo. So I'm going to go ahead and say match logo. That's going to go ahead and pull this nice brick red color from my logo and give me that for some of the titles within my invoice. The footer of the email is where you're going to go ahead and put some notes. Now, the one thing I do like to show here is we have a tip and trick. If you would like to have page numbers listed on your invoice, it's $ lowercase p of $ uppercase P. So this is going to put page 1 of 2, 2 of 2, and it will put it at the bottom of each of your pages. Now, this is also where we're going to want to go ahead and put information. So like a 1.5% interest rate will be applied to all payments not received within, we'll say, 10 days of invoice date. Okay. So if you have anything that you would like to be able to share with your clients on the invoice down in the footer, this is where you would put notes such as the interest rate clause. You can also, again, put your remittance address. Okay, but what I do like to point out is that the remittance address is your address, which is actually going to show up in the header of your invoice. So it is a little bit redundant, but some folks like to put it down there because I know personally when I was looking at invoices, I would draw to the bottom for payment or remittance address. All right. So that's footers. We have the option to put information only on page 1 or at the bottom of all pages, completely up to you. And then we're going to jump into section 3. Now, section 3 is going to determine what is going to show up in the body of our invoice. So line items are going to actually correspond directly with the line items that appear when we create our invoice. We do have the option to show quantity and rate or show tax and rates, show line item names, show the line item note only, or show both name and note. Now, I've worked with the majority of the folks that are on today's call, and you guys are going to be budgeting out and using those task line items. Sometimes we call them tasks, to-dos, engagements. It could be whatever the verbiage is that you use, it all comes down to the same thing. So I've pretty much trained the majority of my clients to use tasks if applicable, where we're going to be able to go ahead and have different items on our projects with budgets. So the majority of the time we will be calculating out and doing an invoice at a task level. And we'll get into that in just a brief moment. So that way we can get this invoice column to populate. However, I do also like to point out that the naming structure of your tasks is important because these are going to be a direct correlation to the line items that populate on our invoice. Okay, note is just a little free-form section that we have on our invoice once we populate line items where you can put some information in. Now, if you do have a task that's set up with hours and charges, you can just pull the sentence from your statement of work around this task, as I did here, consulting as per contractual agreement, and this is the line item that will automatically come over. Now, by setting up these little sentences, this will help you alleviate the need to be able to create cover letters for invoices if at all necessary. So I'll go ahead and close out here. Going back to our invoices, the next portion is time and expense. Now, this is basically asking us if we would like to have any of the information from our timesheets be brought over for our invoice purposes. So you can turn this on. You can see that we have time and expense fields here. You can have expense information only, since time is going to be rolled up into line items. You have the ability to summarize, show overall totals. Now, the one thing that I recommend for everybody is get into these PDF styles, play around with them, turn certain functions on, turn functions off. Find the style that best represents what you want to communicate with your clients. I'm going to go ahead and turn time entries off, but budget status works fairly similar. This is going to be, if we are budgeting in BigTime, how do we want to present those budgeted items to our clients? Now, we do have task groups. So if you are using the subtask functionality within your tasks here, and that is where we're going to have consulting services phase 2 for April, or consulting services phase 2 public outreach. So if you are using these little colon delimiters to be able to break out, you will be wanting to use this budgeting portion to be able to present this to your client. So line items are great, but the line items are going to show exactly what's currently on your invoice. Budget status is going to show you the line items that appear within your project. So we will show overall budget, remaining dollars on the budget, prior billings, and current billings. We also have some options down here to hide archive tasks or hide all unbilled tasks, because by default, this is going to show each and every line item that is appearing as a task within our project. So I'm going to go ahead and hide all unbilled tasks. And then the last little portion is receipts. You can add copies of receipts for any expenses that we're going to be pushing out and billing our clients for. So you can add those 2 to a page, 3 to a page, 4 or 6, or you can just keep the none function on. We're going to go ahead and click on save. So our June invoice template is complete. Running back over to our configuration page, there is one last little tile here, which is our email settings. Now, I'm actually going to go ahead and jump into BigTime's YouTube page, because we do have a very inclusive video already on setting up email templates. I'm just going to go ahead and pull the link for you. I'll put it in the notes. So that way we'll be able to have you reference that after today's webinar to populate. So email settings, I'm going to go ahead and give you a link to be able to access the information. Here we go. Just look at all of our videos. Do actually have many tutorial videos on different aspects of BigTime. So anytime you are struggling with a scenario within your environment, you can always come here and see if we do have a video available. So this is going to be how to customize an invoice email template in BigTime. Like I said, I'll go ahead for you, and it will show you how to be able to set up and customize invoice email templates. So that's everything for our setup portion. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the process for invoicing. Now, the very first and most important step for invoicing is going to be your time. Your employees, whether or not we are going to be billing by time and materials or fixed fee invoicing, we're still going to be treating the timestamps the same. So employees are going to be entering time for the project. The time once submitted will be multiplied by the billing rate. So with that, we're going to jump into billing rates here. So within BigTime's bill rates, we do have several different ways where we can set billing rates up. So my company staff list is where we're going to house these billing rates at a staff list. We can then also go ahead and set these up at an activity list. company staff list, and jumping down, we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. This is where we'll have our billing rates set up. So I have my 2017 base rate, a discounted rate, and then 2016 rates. You can also go ahead and jump into my company and field values. If you are going to be billing at a category level or at an activity level, you can actually jump in, click on the activity that or labor code that we will be pulling up, and you can see that I already have some billing rates associated with this labor code. So this is going to be driven on how we enter our time into our timesheets. If you are using your tasks, engagements, to-dos, then you will want to go ahead and set this up at the staff level as a default, and then build out exceptions to the rule within your billing rates tab. So you can see that by default, the very first thing I'm telling BigTime here is, hey, BigTime, anytime anybody puts some time under our Acme Core for Anvil project management, we're going to use the first multiplier as their staff 2017 base rate. Now, I can go ahead and make selections for a staff rate or from a category within my project. So maybe I want to go ahead and do this by my category base rate. You can select that here. So if you are using staff rates under your base rate type, you're going to want to make sure you choose one of staff A through E. If you're billing by activity level, category A through E. Project flat rate is also available. So this is where we can go ahead and tell BigTime, no matter who's working on this project, BigTime, and no matter which task or category they're working on, everybody's going to bill out at a flat rate of $100 an hour. Now, even if we are invoicing on a fixed fee level, we do want to make sure that we still have billing rates populated. That's going to give us a good jumping off point. A lot of firms are using what's called value-based pricing. Value-based pricing is where we say, hey, we're going to charge you $500 for this service. But what if we're actually spending more time than we anticipated, or on average, our clients are becoming larger or more complicated? This is going to give you a really good metric that says, if I was billing you time and materials, this is how much I would charge you. And then my invoice will reflect that value-based pricing or fixed fee. Okay, so that's project flat rate. Again, within the projects themselves, you can build out exceptions. So this exception here down at the bottom says, hey, BigTime, no matter who's billing time against our Acme Corp project, they're going to bill out at their 2017 base rate, with the exception of Brea. Brea is going to bill out at $250 an hour. Now, you can use any combination of these three columns to be able to create customized billing rates. If you leave an item blank, this means that it's going to apply to all items that fall in your drop-down list. Same with task. So you can choose the task or engagement to do that you're working on. And you can say, Brea is only going to charge $250 if she's working on project initiation. Otherwise, she'll be charged at her base rate. So the word of caution I like to give to folks about this is just make sure that you're consistent. The more complicated you make these, the more opportunity there is for a mistake. So I like to go ahead and use the best practice of do it by staff member or maybe by task. You can leave the staff member portion blank and say, regardless of who's working on this, if they're performing the consulting task, it's going to charge $250, but if they're choosing any other task, it defaults them to their base rate. So you would have to build a custom rate for each task if we were going to be billing at that finite of a level. All right. So billing rates are set into the system. The one thing I do like to show my folks is if we go invoicing and overview, once we update billing rates, we can actually need to tell the system to make sure that any changes that we made are applied to timestamps that are already sitting in our WIP. The way that we do that is by clicking on this update rates and then saying yes to confirm. And then this will update all of the work that's sitting in my work in progress bucket, which again is time multiplied by billing rate, to reflect all of the billing rate updates I've made. Okay, so now we're actually ready to kind of get into the invoicing portion. I like to start on my dashboard page because the most important part of invoicing is going to be the time. We want to make sure that we capture all of the time for the given date range within our invoice. Time can only be captured if it's submitted. So right now I have 0 hours to submit, but if you have anything in this to submit column, this is an interactive tile that you can click on. You can force submit time that's been put into the system. If I were to have time that was entered but not submitted, it would say how many hours and have a little arrow here. By clicking on the arrow, it forces it from entered into the submitted column. Now, I also do have approved or review and approvals turned on for my environment. So the next thing that I want to look at is to make sure that no time is sitting in this rejected column. If time is sitting in this rejected column, that means that your employees, you rejected some of their time and they have not yet gone in and corrected it. So you'll need to say, hey, Madeline, I see you have some rejected time. I'm getting ready to invoice and I need you to jump in and make those corrections that I requested. Once everything is set up in either in submitted or approved, nothing's over and rejected. It does not require that your time be posted to your QuickBooks file in order to invoice, only that it is in submitted or higher in the workflow. Okay, we're going to jump into invoicing and overview, and then we're going to jump into our WIP here very shortly. Now, there is a create invoice button here. Because we are timekeeping software and because we are generating WIP for the majority of our projects, manual invoices are not the way to go for us. A manual invoice is going to be an invoice that is not or does not have any WIP set up with the project. So if no one has any timestamps against the project, you can definitely go ahead and click on this create invoice button here. But this will create that manual invoice where the WIP will not clear out, or we won't be pulling any WIP to be associated with the invoice. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click into the dollar amount of our work in progress, which is going to take us to our WIP screen. So let's discuss what we're taking a look at here. We do have the create invoice option here at the top. And what I do like to let people know is that you can go ahead and click on any one of your projects and it will change this to say bulk create invoices. Now, if you are budgeting at all, this is not the invoice for you. When you hit this button, this will create a time and materials invoice with 0 subtotals. Okay, if you are budgeting in any way, shape, or form within BigTime, you need to subtotal at a task level. So if your invoicing and your totals aren't hitting your budgets on your project screen, it may be because there's no subtotal within the actual invoice that we created. Okay, next little thing over, we do have a search function. So I just like to go ahead and pick on my favorite man of the hour, Tony Stark. I do a lot of work for Stark Industries. Okay, Iron Man if you don't know. All right, so you can use this little search field to filter down the projects that are available on your listing here. And we can back out to be able to see all of the projects that I currently have WIP sitting in. The next little portion over is advanced filters. Now, advanced filters is a way for us to be able to bill for time without affecting all of our WIP. So we can pre-filter the WIP to be able to say, hey, I'm only going to be billing for time that appeared on or before May 1st. Okay, in order to do that, I would just go ahead and click on my advanced filters, jump into my date range function, go ahead and because I want on or before, I'm going to leave this first option blank. So we can go ahead and choose May 1st option here and then click on apply. You can see that it's going to change my WIP filter to say on or before 5/1 of 2017. You can filter by project type, invoice type, or even by team lead. So what I'd like to point out is that we're going to be looking at WIP that happened on or before 5/1. So our current WIP is sitting at $108,649.25. When I click on my apply button, you're going to see that this is going to recalculate my WIP, and it's only showing timestamps multiplied by billing rate that happened on or before 5/1. Across the top, if you do use advanced filters, you will get an indicator which will show you what advanced filter is currently being applied to your view. Okay. You do have a filter option here, very similar to our reporting capabilities, where you will be able to go ahead and click on your filter within your header, get a new option, and then you can say, hey, I really only want to see items for Gringotts, and you can apply. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and remove my filter by clearing the filter and then turn our filter function off. The gear icon appears many places within BigTime. This is actually going to give you the option to restructure columns that are currently in your view, as well as to add columns to your current view. So if you're using like invoice type, fixed fee versus time and materials, this is a really good identifier to turn on. So you'll be able to see that in the invoice type. Most of my folks are time and materials, but you'll be able to see, oh, this is time and materials, this is fixed fee, directly from your WIP screen. Okay. The next little portion over is export. This was a really great way that I was able to share with my principal whenever I was getting ready to invoice. Hey, I'm ready to invoice, and this is what's currently showing in our WIP. Am I good to go? And she would take a look and say, you know, don't invoice CHOM because there's only $20, or DFP, or you know, invoice everything but items that fall under the $500 threshold. Okay. So you can send an export to PDF or Excel, whichever works best for you. I'm going to go ahead and turn my advanced filter off, only because I want to be able to work within my little Acme Anvil project here. Okay, so oh, my invoice type came over a little funky. I'm going to actually move my column here, the invoice type, to be before my fees, only because it's really nice to have a flat view of hours, fees, expenses, and WIP. So you just grab the little navigation star, drag it over to where you want it to appear, and that will restructure your columns. All right. Hours is going to show how many hours we have currently sitting in our WIP for this project. Fees is if you want to actually drill down and take a look at the timestamps that compose a total of 316 hours, you can click on fees and you can say, hey, I only want to charge for Brea's time, or maybe I only want to charge for these 314 hours that we had. Okay. Or you can choose both by clicking on the staff member option. From this screen, you will be able to create a time and materials invoice. Okay, so what I like to show is that we do have a drop down next to create invoice. If you do have expenses that are also associated with this project, you can click on select expenses, and then you'll also be able to select individually which expenses you would like to incorporate into this invoice. So if I click on create invoice from here, so what's going to happen is that for time and materials, it's going to show what the rate type is that I'm charging for this project. It's also going to show the invoice date range. Now, because this is time that I selected from that fee page, it's only going to show today's date. But what I do like to point out is that this is going to change the WIP that's associated with your invoice if you change the date range here. So for an example, we're going to say I only want time entered between May 1st and June 15th. It will recalculate, and luckily my all of my time falls underneath this date range. But if I were to say I only want items June 1st through June 15th, that might actually change my dollar amount to 0. Okay, so again, this is just be cognizant. This date range applies to the WIP or the timestamps that you want associated with your invoice. Summary or subtotal setting is muy important. This is going to be how we're telling BigTime to calculate the information within the BigTime environment. Now, I like to go ahead and make sure that if you are using tasks budgeting in any way, shape, or form within your BigTime, you do need to either subtotal by task or by task and rate. I'm going to show you the difference. So the task general will show the quantity of 1 and the full 79,000 I have to bill. By task rate, this is going to show 316 hours at $250 an hour to total my 79,000. Now, if you use task rate and have multiple billing rates, so maybe your principal bills out at 250, your seniors bill out at 200, and your interns bill out at 75, it will create a consulting line item for each of those billing rates. So I like to use by task, okay? Invoice notes will automatically populate with the notes that we have for our default invoice notes and will transfer over to our overall notes as well. So just remember, before we hit finalize, this is going to pertain to WIP only, all right? You can jump in here, you can make some changes. I like to make my changes after I finalize, just because this makes sure that I'm not pulling any or dropping any of my WIP back into my WIP bucket. So I'll go ahead and click on finalize here. Okay, you can see that my invoice number will pre-populate with the little invoice auto formatting that we set up earlier in today's presentation. The period is where I can go ahead and say, hey, this is for all work performed on or before June 15th, or say that this is for the work that's done June 1st through June 15th. My purchase order number pre-populates for me. The reason for that is because in my actual project, I have a custom field that says PO number. It will, as long as it doesn't have any additional characters after PO number, it will pull whatever I put in this field and have that reflected in the PO number box here. Now, for a lot of folks, they are using work order numbers, so you can go ahead and do like work order number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in order to get it to populate as a PO, the name of the field has to be PO space number with the capitalization exactly as I have it here. Jumping back into our invoice, our PO number will be here. Now, each invoice has a workflow, starting at drafted, moving down to approved, posted, sent, paid, closed, and hopefully never disputed. We've also got my terms automatically set up. Now, the terms, you will have to go ahead. This is one configuration piece that has to happen inside your first invoice. You will go ahead and click on the drop down here. You see our little gray edit these values box. You'll click on that to get your field. It will take you to your invoice terms. You will be able to click on what you would like to be your default to be used on your invoices. Click on this little radio button that will automatically set this up. Now you can see, because I do have my default terms already set up, my draft date was today's date, 6/15, but my due date auto-calculated for me based off of my terms. Send date will automatically update for you if you are sending your invoices out of BigTime. All right, so this page here is the invoice notes. This is what we were referring to as the overall note in our PDF style. And again, just whatever we have in this default invoice notes is what will show up in the overall note. If you have something here and you have the overall note selected, it will print on your client's invoices every time. Okay. If we want to go ahead and jump in and see the timestamps that are associated with this invoice, we can jump into time details. Time details will show you the staff members' information. We do, of course, also have our gear icon to change our view. I have a field in here for WIP adjusted amount. This is going to show me if I write up or write down any of my line items based off of what I'm actually billing for time and materials. Okay. So we also have filter functions if you have multiple time details where you can go ahead and say, I would like to see this by Brea's time. You can click on any of the headers, which are completely interactive, very similar to our reporting functionality, which will also give you a subtotal line down here at the bottom. Expense details are exactly the same. For this invoice, we don't have any expenses to add, but it's the same principle. Okay. From our invoice summary, we'll talk about write-ups and write-downs next. Now, you can actually go ahead and change the view of how your line items are populating by clicking on the little arrow next to amount. So you can show quantity, rate, and amount, which is the view that we're currently on, or you can show description only. Again, this does not pertain to what we're showing to our clients. What we show to our clients is completely driven by our PDF style. So I'll go ahead and leave it with my description only. Now, if I want to say write this up, we'll say that my not to exceed budget for this was actually $80,000. So I want to build this out to 100% completion. I can write this up to 80,000. I can then go ahead and save changes, jump into my time details. My adjusted rate will now auto-calculate, which is going to show that I wrote this invoice up by $1,000. I only had $79,000 worth of time and materials in my WIP, but we're charging me $80,000. Okay. It will also go ahead and do the same calculation for you and provide you with a metric to be able to report on. So that's why I do like doing my write-ups or write-downs at this the invoice portion of invoice creation. So once the invoice is created, I will do all of my adjustments for my line items to be able to get that WIP write-up or write-down. Okay. Activity feed down here at the bottom is going to tell us when invoices were created, any time an invoice was updated or changed. This is also once we send out an invoice to one of our clients, we'll also say that this invoice was sent to Joe Bob Jones over on June 15th. And since I've sent it, he's opened it 5 times. Okay, just a nice identifier. I liked it for my own personal peace of mind. When a client called me and said, oh, I never got my invoice, I would be able to kind of at least know for my own, like I said, for my own sanity, that yes, Joe Bob Jones, I've sent this over to you. You've actually opened it 5 times. Never really probably going to say that to him, but again, I know. So no problem, Mr. Jones. Let me go ahead and shoot that off to you again, and I can shoot it again directly out of BigTime. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to start talking about these little icons. The first one is our PDF or print style. So these should look familiar. We just created that June invoice template or print style at the beginning of today's session. So I'm going to go ahead and use this and apply it to my invoice so we can see what that looks like. Now, as I do that, it will create a PDF for me to be able to go ahead and open. All right, you can see that just the information that I've laid out. So my address block is at the top with my logo. Acme Anvil Corporation and their billing address shows up here. This portion is, or this line here is blank because I actually didn't have a billing contact associated for Acme Corp. Okay. The fields that we chose in section 2 all appear here, as well as the nice brick red for the word invoice and the dollar amount down here. I have line items turned on, which is actually driving this functionality. And then I also had budgeting information turned on as well. So that's what's driving this function. So like I said, it's going to be some trial and error, jumping in, playing, turning certain functions on, turning certain functions off to be able to get what's perfect for you. Now, again, what is being presented to our client is not what is in our actual invoice, but it's the information from the timestamps that are associated with the invoice that filter through our PDF style for presentation. Second little icon up here is for Word. So if you do need to go ahead and push your invoice to a Word document for further Further customization, you definitely can do that. The one word of caution about that is that if you do so, you will lose the capability to be able to send your invoice out of BigTime. Next is going to be our QuickBooks post this invoice. So if I want to post this invoice over to my QuickBooks file, you can see that this is going to come over with my invoice number, PO number, date, terms, classes. If I was to use them, I could identify that here. It's going to show my bill to, the AR account that this should be associated with. This is going to be the service item that this revenue should be associated with. And again, under the amount, we have a drop-down field here. Now, this is going to give you different views where you're going to be able to say, you know, I want this broken out by different dates, by people. So however you have your information currently posting over in QuickBooks, we can match that. It's just going to be jumping into this little drop-down field. So that way you're able to make sure that we can get that over. When I'm ready to post to QuickBooks, it's a simple click of the post to QuickBooks. It's going to say that it's currently posting. All right, and then that will actually show up in a posted status and will show up in my QuickBooks file. You can see that once I post to QuickBooks, the QuickBooks icon gets grayed out. It's just a good identifier to say, hey, you probably have to go in and delete this invoice from your QuickBooks file if you want to repost it because you needed to make a correction. Next little icon is the dollar sign. This is where we do have some very basic AR within BigTime. Most of our folks are running concurrent with QuickBooks. So we do say that if you want to, you can reflect payments, but you would have to record it in both places. So because QuickBooks is normally your finance software, it would be the priority to have it there. If you're using BigTime as a standalone, definitely feel free to do this. But if you want to record payments in your BigTime environment and are using QuickBooks, it will require that you record the payments in both places. Okay. Next little portion over is our envelope to email this invoice. This is going to say that I do have a contact, but not a billing contact. So that's Mr. Bugs Bunny. So I can say that I want to send him a copy of this invoice. I can carbon copy anybody who's listed on the on the project team, or I can blind carbon copy myself. This is all a part of that template, which is showing in your chat function. So definitely, if you're going to be invoicing out of BigTime and would like to send out of BigTime, you'll want to update your email template. So I can go ahead and I can email myself a preview copy. And this is going to use the PDF style BPBTI timestamps. So you can actually send it in the PDF file that we just created, which was that June invoice template. And those are just two different views or different presentation templates of how we're going to be sending this off to our client. So that's everything for a time and materials invoice. We are cutting close to our time. So I'm going to jump in and just go ahead and create a really quickly a fixed fee invoice. So again, jumping into our WIP screen or work in progress. Instead of jumping into the fees column, I'm actually going to want to jump into the WIP column. So I'm going to go ahead and do one for CHOM for Spice Consulting because we have both expense or fees and expenses. We'll click on the WIP column, and from the Create Invoice option here, we're going to choose Create a Fixed Fee Invoice. Now, when we choose that, what's going to happen is it's going to actually populate all of the line items that I have on my CHOM tasks. Okay, so and it's also going to go ahead and reflect my copy services because I did have an expense that I also wanted to associate with this. Now, again, column on the left-hand side is going to be reflective of your WIP, so you won't want to make any changes here. But let's say that we're going to go ahead and bill out for some of our consulting and project initiation. Now, you can see that the amount box will automatically come open for you, so you can do a couple of different things. We can go ahead and say, I'm going to charge them $500 this month for consulting and maybe $1,500 for my project initiation. Or I can go ahead and I can turn on percent complete or milestone billing. Now, milestone billing means that this is done. You can say, I'm going to charge for everything that's left in the budget. You can go ahead and you can choose percent complete, which is going to show that the $880 is 8% of what I have here. Or I can just go ahead and bump and say, I'm going to build this up to 50%. You can see it's going to auto-calculate this for us. So if I choose consulting, we'll do 5% of consulting to give us a grand total of $88.9. So again, I'll go ahead and finalize. Everything from this point forward is exactly the same. You'll be using your PDF styles, going down your workflow. You're going to be posting to your QuickBooks, emailing to your clients, looking at your activity feed, but this is exactly the same as you would do for a time and materials invoice. So that leaves us about 5 minutes left on our schedule. I wanted to go ahead and open up just to make sure you guys didn't have any questions. If you do have questions, you can jump into the questions function of your GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar control panel. And I'll give you guys just a few moments there. So just got in a question from Miss Allie, who asks, can you show where to go to sync invoices to QBO? So absolutely, Miss Allie, QBO is actually going to be driven out of this cloud functionality to post the invoice. So I'll click on that option. You can see I don't have service items already connected to these line items within my default in project. So I will have to associate the service item that I want this to be associated or allocated to, and then just simply post to QuickBooks. That's all it takes. Miss Tammy asked, do you have to create a template for each month or for each client? Miss Tammy, no, absolutely. You can create just a general template and use that over and over as long as it applies to what you want to present to your clients within invoicing. So you don't have to create one each month. It's just going to determine what you actually want to share with your clients. And if some clients, like I said, want to have budget information but don't want to see timestamps or etc. Okay, well, team, I do want to thank you so very much for your attendance on behalf of the Success team and, of course, our support team over at BigTime. If you have any questions, please do feel free to go ahead and shoot those over to support@bigtime.net. You do get unlimited support tickets with your annual subscription of BigTime. So thank you very much. Next week is going to be reporting. So if you would like, definitely hop on and on the website, you'll be able to go ahead and pre-register for that reporting webinar. All right. Thanks so much, team. Have a wonderful day and an even better weekend. Bye-bye.